Good morning and thank you for joining us for State of Texas In Depth. I'm Josh Hinkle. The clock is ticking down. About 3 weeks left in the 84th Texas legislative session. If lawmakers or advocates want to get their bills through or block a measure, they need to act now. That's why we'll see a flurry of activity at the Capitol with demonstrations and deal making. Some of the most controversial proposals had to do with the right to carry weapons. Bills that legalized the open carry of handguns or allowed people to go into college classrooms with guns brought out a lot of emotion. This week, survivors of the country's deadly school shootings made their case against the so-called campus carry bill. If passed, it would allow people to bring guns into public college classrooms and dorms. Alicia Enns has the story.
Colin Goddard knows what it's like to be in a classroom when an armed man bursts in and starts shooting.
I was shot 4 times myself. I've thought about that morning every single which way.
The 2007 Virginia Tech shooting survivor is sharing his story.
Still have 3 bullets inside my body.
And pushing Texas lawmakers to allow colleges to choose for themselves when it comes to guns.
Don't remove the ability for schools to set their own decisions and policies on allowing guns in dormitories, in classrooms, in science labs, etc. It's just not the right way to go about it.
So this is a letter that we have that was signed by elected student government officials from across the states.
Like Goddard, some UT students are hoping a few signatures will be enough to stop guns from coming inside the classroom.
And regardless of if I feel comfortable around guns or not, the general sentiment is that this would make a college campus generally more unsafe.
A message heard outside the Capitol before the debate begins inside. Alicia Enns, KXAN News.
Supporters of the bill say this law would improve safety. They say only people over the age of 21 can get a CHL, a fraction of college students. A Texan with a CHL can already go into public college campuses, just not in the classroom.
When the law passes, no one's going to know any difference or see any difference, except for the one situation where some bad guy decides to assault some young lady or someone on campus, and that person can defend and protect themselves.
The Texas Senate passed a campus carry bill. A similar bill has passed out of a House committee and is waiting for floor vote. If the House passes a bill, the 2 versions would then go to conference committee to blend the 2 together. History made this week at the Texas legislature with a bill that would legalize marijuana making its way through a committee, and it could have a date with the House floor soon. The bill, sponsored by Longview Republican David Simpson, would simply eliminate the prohibition on marijuana except for those under the age of 21. Supporters say this would be a clean slate, meaning less regulation on marijuana than other products like alcohol. The vote in the House committee even surprised supporters like Zoe Russell from Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition.
Feels great. It feels awesome to think that Texas is actually the most liberty-minded state in the country, because there's no other state that has put forward legislation, anything really remotely close to just striking the original prohibitive language.
Republican supporters say eliminating the prohibition could mean more revenue through taxes, but it also cuts costs, meaning police departments can spend less money on drug enforcement. Plus, they argue it takes money away from cartels. Despite the bill having Republican backing, not all on the right were on board. Representative Matt Shaheen of Plano voted no. He told us there are bigger issues to fight, such as health care, poverty, and drug-infested neighborhoods. To do something like legalizing marijuana, in his opinion, would only compound those issues.
I will do everything I can to defeat it. If it does make it to the floor, I will fight it on the floor. I will do everything I can so that we don't harm Texans.
The bill now heads to the full House. It will also need approval from the more conservative Texas Senate. On the other side of the Capitol, the Texas Senate passed a bill that restricts private insurance companies from covering abortions. Under the proposal, no private insurance plan in Texas would include abortion coverage unless a person decides to buy supplemental coverage. There is an exception for life-threatening situations. Also at the Capitol this week, superintendents and school board presidents pushing for more money for education.
And we asked, would you come and stand united with us to advocate for more money for public education?
The state superintendents are seeking $3 billion for schools. Right now, the House's budget fully funds that amount, but the Senate version only provides about half, $1.4 billion. The two versions are currently being considered by a conference committee. Well, we're winding down the days left in the legislative session. It's the time when every lawmaker is trying to get his or her major projects through. I spoke with Dallas Republican Representative Jason Villalba about what he wants to happen in the coming weeks. The discussion began with the state budget negotiations.
Well, the budget, there was some disagreements on the amounts, but I think generally the general overall concept of what we're trying to achieve, transportation, public education, border security, both chambers agree upon. So I think there is some consensus there. I know we're still wrestling over tax reform, what the tax cuts will look like. That may take us into overtime, but I doubt that. I think we're going to find a way to compromise and reach consensus with the Senate and the House and get something to the governor right away.
What's been your pet project, the bill that you really wanted to work on and see passed? How's that going?
Well, I had a project to create the very first business chancery court in Texas. This is something that other states have. It's worked well around the country. Unfortunately, I don't think there's enough time to get a bill of that magnitude across the finish line. So my second backup is a bill we passed yesterday in the House that's going over the Senate, which is the creation of an ignition interlock device requirement and occupational license for convicted drunk drivers. Currently, they don't have access to that, and what ends up happening is these people that have been convicted will drive on a suspended license. With the ignition interlock, we allow them to drive with the ignition interlock so that they cannot drive intoxicated. We think that's going to be a good bill. It was MAD's #1 bill, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers bill for the session, and we passed it out of the House, and Senator Huffman is carrying it with great enthusiasm over the Senate. We think that one will get to the governor.
Obviously, that topic has been a big topic here in Austin. You know, we have a college town, a lot of nightlife. Do you feel like that this is something your constituents brought, or was it something that was a concern statewide?
Texas has the highest number of fatalities from drunken driving in the country. Now, we're obviously one of the largest states, but it's disproportionate to, say, Florida and New York. The reason we have that is because our laws, which are quite strong, don't provide for ignition interlocks at the earliest stages of conviction. I think with this, we can see a reduction in fatalities up to 60–65%, which is what you're seeing in other states that have adopted this kind of legislation. So we're hopeful that it really does make a difference, makes our streets safer for our families, and that we can get some good legislation done to keep Texas roads safe.
One of the issues we've talked to you about in recent months is the school marshal program. You had been looking at some tweaks to that law, and I know that there's some things going on in the Senate side as well. Kind of give me an update on that.
One of the things that we want to do is to make sure that if you are a parent, you can find out whether or not your child is attending a school that has a school marshal program. That was one of the bills that we have. We think next week it's going to come to the floor. That one is a minor tweak, just giving parents more disclosure. We think that's a good one. We've also tried to expand the school marshal program into private schools and to junior colleges. Now, those two have made it through committee, and they're in calendars now. We're still awaiting whether or not they'll move forward in the Senate. We do think it makes sense. Private schools and junior colleges have actually asked for the program, and so we're wanting to give them what they're looking for.
Are you confident that's going to go through?
I'm not confident, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's good legislation. I think people do want it in the private schools and junior colleges, but anytime you deal with the expansion of an existing program that's in its infancy, there's going to be resistance. We know there's resistance in both chambers, and so we're going to have to work through that.
Remember, the regular session ends on June 1st, 3 weeks away. Representative Villalba says that gives about 2 weeks for the House to vote on its bills and a week to tackle Senate bills. They fought for our freedom, and many veterans return from war with serious injuries that need frequent medical care. Sometimes that means traveling hundreds of miles to get to places like VA hospitals, and toll roads are often the fastest, most direct routes. But some disabled vets reach out to KXAN confused about a program meant to give them access to tollways for free, because charges started showing up in the mail. KXAN investigator Lindsey Bramson discovered not every tolling authority participates.
It was December 9th, 2011. We were on a dismounted patrol just outside of Sangin, Afghanistan. In the northern Helmand province.
It was a moment that changed Marcus Burleson's life forever.
And me and my team member noticed something suspicious in an alleyway that we were going to have to go through on our way out. While I was in the middle of my procedures, it detonated with me kneeling over it.
2.5 weeks after the bomb went off, this Marine woke up in a hospital back home and didn't leave for more than 2 years.
I broke my neck, broke 9 bones in my face, completely shattered the left side of my eye socket. I am completely blind in my left eye.
Now a double amputee with 1 prosthetic hand. Burleson says he drives 100 miles south from the Austin area to the medical center in San Antonio at least once a month for treatment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more difficult for me to get around than it is for some.
That's the reason state lawmakers created the Veterans Discount Program. If you're a vet making that same trek and want to bypass the traffic and delays of I-35, tollways might be the better option. But it's confusing because each tollway is owned and operated differently. Take this route, 183A, managed by the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority, to the TxDOT managed state-funded SH-45 North and the upper section of SH-130 down to the privately run section of 130. The TxDOT stretch is free for veterans, but the other toll roads still charge them because right now the law says it's optional.
Why don't you give veterans free access to your toll roads?
We've thought about it, we've worked on it, we've developed the numbers, and we're having a hard time making all that work right now.
CTRMA Executive Director Mike Helligenstein says waiving fees for vets would mean his tollways would lose around $900,000 a year.
As the executive director, you could make that decision to give vets free access to the toll roads. Why not do it?
It's a matter of cost right now. I think it's cost, and I think it's also where do we stop it.
A handful of proposals at the Capitol this session, including one from Central Texas Representative Jason Isaac, would require all toll authorities to give vets free access.
We need to be clear on that for our veterans, and I think the easiest way to do that is to just make all the toll roads free for our disabled veterans.
Isaac's bill would also allow the legislature to appropriate funds to help toll entities bear those costs. But time is short. The session is winding down, and the bill has been awaiting a hearing before the House Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee since February.
Can I magically produce money and appropriate that to people for this purpose? The answer is I cannot. However, going forward, there's a possibility this can be brought to the legislature.
KXAN shared vets' concerns with committee chairwoman Susan King. While it might be too late this session, she promised to study the issue ahead of the next.
Yes, I do have a lot more ability to steer and look at and bring this to light, and so certainly that will be my intent to do that.
A promise Burleson says shows the respect disabled vets deserve and need.
I think it would be a great thing. I think it would be a great show of faith toward the veterans that have served the country.
That was Lindsey Bramson reporting. Both CTRMA and the SH-130 concession company tell us if there was funding from the state, they would implement the program. We will follow up on lawmakers' progress. For more information on this investigation, including other freebies and discounts for veterans, go to our website, kxan.com. Thank you for joining us for State of Texas In Depth. Remember, you can join us every Sunday morning in the 8:30 half hour for a broader look at Texas politics. Stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.